Yesterday, as we were driving back from an event, Harishji was passingly giving a certain feedback, something to ponder. The gist of it, what he was trying to put it up, there's so much of knowledge we talk about, there's so much of discussion. Sometimes it might lead us into a philosophical forum where everybody is just talking and talking and talking, as if it is not leading us anywhere, because all that matters is we must look at action. What is everybody doing after gaining on this knowledge? What is the use of all this talk? See, if the knowledge is rightly approached, if the knowledge is rightly embraced, imbibed, I would say knowledge itself is action. And when knowledge is just limited to classrooms and satsangs and forums and platforms where you voice out your thoughts and ideas and vomit them, without allowing it to distill down into your own, absorb into your own personality, then the knowledge is of no use. But if the knowledge is understood, if the knowledge is instilled, if the knowledge is reflected, that is when knowledge itself is action. If not so, I would say let's put aside these textbooks, let's all gather at a point and let's embark and do some action. That is karma. Indeed, it's essential. If possible, I would do that. I would say, let's all meet and do some seva. How long will you work for yourself? Little bit, come and do some seva for others, for a cause. I will do that. That's important. But as long as you don't, you separate knowledge from action, you have not understood knowledge. Neither will you be able to act, because what precedes any action is a knowledge. Even if I need to get to a place, I need to have know-how and knowledge of the place, how to get there, without which I would not get there. I need to have a roadmap. So those who say that knowledge is good, but action is important, I would say you have not understood knowledge. If you have understood it, if you have embraced it, if you have reflected it, if you have made it a part of yourself, knowledge itself is action. And I'm not suggesting by any means that Harishji doesn't understand it. He was only trying to raise a thought. And the more you get grounded in knowledge, the more your actions are towards the goal that you want to seek. Because the knowledge gives you a clear direction. Remember that. If you don't have a clear direction, if it doesn't give you a conviction in the path, you may believe in certain things, yet you don't necessarily follow it, isn't it? Why you don't follow it? Because there is no conviction in the knowledge to abide by it. So the knowledge gives you a very firm conviction so that you take the actions necessarily follow that path. And I again take the example. Knowledge is like a groove. Your actions is like the water flowing. If you create a groove, the water will only flow in the groove. The mind and the actions will only flow in the groove created by the knowledge and the intellect. Otherwise, your action, you talk one thing and you do something else. They're not in sync. I still lend my ears to see how we can make this knowledge more applicable. There has always been the intent, not just to leave you in high philosophical thoughts where it doesn't have a chord with your day-to-day activities. The thought heavily hit me when he said that, and I thought I should not justify, but just genuinely feel how my little take on this knowledge is and how it fits in. Okay. Now, having said that, we have been discussing the 29th verse, Artham Anartham. We said wealth is neither positive nor negative. It depends on how you relate with it, how you deal with it. If the wealth is negative, the wealth presents itself as a negative, where it becomes an obstacle in every sphere, in every aspect, in every possible way. Wealth becomes an impediment. Wealth becomes an impediment for your enjoyment. Wealth becomes an impediment for your progression. But that's your wrong relationship with it. But one who knows that art of relating with wealth rightly, it becomes the goddess of wealth. It's worshipped, it's adored, it is revered, it is divinized. Now the question is, as a bird's eye view, I wanted to sum up, but didn't get an opportunity because of the discussion that led us in a certain direction. I thought I will mention these ideas, but you've heard of this time and again, but perhaps to be captured it as a snippet, you'll get the various insights. When does the wealth become negative? Again, I said wrong relationship. What is a wrong relationship with wealth? Wealth is neutral. It becomes negative when you wrongly relate with it. Now, firstly, when you relate with wealth with a selfish attitude, when you acquire wealth through a selfish means, and you develop a selfish attachment to the produce, it becomes negative. The means of acquisition is selfish. You develop a possessive attitude to your acquisitions. Your wealth is negative. And those who develop a selfish attachment to wealth, they end up hoarding and aggrandizing. They constantly keep hoarding and aggrandizing. to continuously satisfy their unending selfish demands and desires. Whatever said and done, we're all selfish beings. Unless you have really worked on yourself to shed the impurities of your selfishness and ego, you are a selfish being. Look at yourself. Look at your inner self and be true to yourself and tell me, are you selfish? Are you unselfish? Are you selfless? Invariably, you'll realize you are a selfish being. So it's only degree of selfishness that keeps changing. First thing. When you approach wealth as an end in itself, the wealth becomes a demon. Then you will place it, you will position it as if it is everything in your life. That's what end in itself means. Again, nothing new, very familiar. I'm just giving a bird's eye view as to what and how and when wealth becomes an impediment or a blessing. So when you use it as an end in itself, as if it is everything in your life, everything is defined and revolves around wealth, then wealth becomes negative. And those who revolve around wealth invariably lead a rajasic life, a life where you develop the trishna, the thirst, the greed for acquisition. And that is the very nature of the material world, that the more you are relating with it from a rajasic perspective, it only develops greed and thirst of wanting more. That's what the very second verse of this very same text, he says, Mudha jahihi dhanagama trishna. O fool, give up your thirst for aggrandizing wealth. He doesn't say, do not acquire, please. He only says, give up your thirst for acquisition. The text is very clear. Give up your foolish pursuit of acquiring, not the very act of acquiring. So you can acquire royally, but not with the constant trishna, the thirst. And the very pursuit of wealth, whenever we talk of the pursuit of wealth, there are three aspects to wealth. As I think Sidhuji last week he mentioned, the three aspects to wealth, which is acquisition, preservation, and parting with wealth. Now tell me, where do you find joy in all the three? I don't think I'm qualified to answer this question because I've never worked in my life. Genuinely, I'm saying, I'm not trying to impress you. Right after my school, I went to the ashram, and all my life thereafter was an ashram life. I have never worked for a living. But everybody is acquiring, and everything related to wealth is acquisition, preservation, and to part. Tell me, where is joy written in three elements of wealth? Prior, while, and after. The opening shot is by Sriniji. What do you call the opening shot in golf?
Oh, there it is. I can unmute. It's the first tee shot.
So there you go.
The first hole.
It's your shot, sir.
Pranam Guruji.
Namaskar.
To be honest, the answer is fairly logical, but I'm being, if I really think about it, in the early years, acquisition of wealth gets you happy momentarily. True happiness or joy is when you've already acquired it and you're partying. So I'm being thoughtful about what I'm just saying, because there's a state as you grow in life and you become independent. There's a thirst for whether it's career advancement, professional advancement, financial security, which all leads to one thing, which unfortunately is wealth acquisition. And in that journey, it is a momentary happiness, in my view. Or you feel you're mentally safe. But then you get into this rat race and like a hamster. So that's my.
You know what was that?
I don't know.
Hole in one.
Wow. Your knowledge of golf is amazingly improving.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you for that. No, you make absolute sense. It's all momentary and it eludes you rest of your life. And then I'm sure you would concur that thereafter life seems to be purposeless. You lose the clarity. What am I really being sucked into? Almost you're sucked into something out of which it's so difficult to get out of. But even philosophizing it's not, even, forget philosophizing, even from a layman's perspective, you examine it, the very act of acquiring is a lifetime process. It's not that you go to a casino, you play a few games, win a jackpot, and then you hang your boots and say, oh, I've acquired enough for my life. It's never like that. It's slogged and slogged and slogged and slogged, isn't it? You're all the time putting your blood and sweat and toil, you sacrifice your comforts, you sacrifice your family. I have heard many people saying that recently somebody said that, I've hardly spent time with my children during their growing days. All the time I was only traveling, I was in workshops, I was traveling in meetings and offices, and all I've seen is boardrooms and offices and factories and airport lounges, and that's all I've seen. And by the time I realized, my child has grown up, I don't have time for them anymore, and they have moved on. For what? Just to acquire enough wealth for yourself. So acquisition is a lot of sacrifice. In fact, your whole life you're drained out to acquire. And I don't have to tell you all the pain and application and the constant supervision just to preserve what you've acquired, isn't it? And if somebody were to knock at your door and part with it, that is the first heart attack. What? Am I to part with something I've given my entire life to? I must give you for what? Try to give you what I've acquired. This is very dear to me. This is me. This is me. And you want a part of me? No way. Tell me, there's no, people don't enjoy any part of it. It's like you get into a field of activity to gain attention, especially you get into, let's say, the film industry or the celebrities, they become so famous. And once they become famous, they want to be captured. How many of them enjoy the limelight? Having sought limelight, how many of them enjoy limelight? They end up suing these paparazzi, as they say, isn't it? Princess Diana gave her life away, running away from these paparazzi. They will come behind you every minute, every second. Somebody wants to photograph you, You're suing them. And today, when a marriage album comes and where you attended, you're flipping through the photographs. Where am I? Where am I? Where am I? Am I there? Am I here? Am I there? Where am I? How am I looking? And any photo comes in a group, instantly you enlarge your photograph and say, don't bother to have anybody in there. So much recognition you want for your own personality. And then there are people who are there on cover pages in the best magazines in the print every other day. They are there and they are sick and tired of the very same act. Again, the same thing. Wealth is neutral. Even this recognition, name and fame is neutral. But if you don't know how to relate with it, the very same recognition can cause you suffocation. So it's nothing to do with wealth. But since people don't know how to relate with it, every phase of it is torture and painful. Isn't it, sir? That is what the text is saying, isn't it? Na asti tata sukhalesha satyam. There is not the least happiness from it. He's telling you, why don't you guys realize it, man? There is no happiness in it. All the three phases: acquisition, preservation, parting. No happiness. If you don't relate with it well, I'm still with a negative. But any idea why people don't enjoy the limelight? Reddy Garu. So you're already hole in one, sir. Now you can take a little break. What's Sriniji? Okay, huh?
Pranam Guruji.
Namaskar.
I just trying to understand the parting is a painful because I don't think we have come to the stage. Not we, I can say that most of us, either in the acquisition or preservation. The parting is a last most factor because about a couple of days back, I was requesting my sons to part with their old shirts or pants, what they have. They picked up some of them. They picked up some of them. They were checking and rechecking. Can they reuse it again before parting? And some are dropped, say that, no, we will use it for some time. So that amount of pain which they get through in parting is really challenging. So leave about the wealth, even the old cloth parting also, we are so painful for somebody. So I think we are in a real vicious circle: acquisitions, preservation, parting. And I think the stage of parting is far, far away in most of the thought process. So since we are not come to the parting, most probably the parting happens, then the joy comes, the happiness comes, but we are not reached to that majority of the times. We are dwelling in between these two, acquisitions and preservations. It's keep accumulating. I think as one of your programs you've been mentioning here, there is no end for the our needs. 1 acre becomes 5 acres, 5 acres becomes 10 acres. So are we limiting anywhere? No. So one home to the weekend homes to the bigger homes. The rarest rare we come across talking about parting, except seeing some of the peoples like whom we met across in yesterday's interactions.
Yeah.
Who I think the more dedicated to the parting than the acquisitions and preservations. For them, the priority is a parting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I will mention of my conversation with Prasadji. I don't know how many of you were around me, and he asked me a very pertinent question. I don't know whether it's the right time to mention of it. He was asking me, sir, I'll come back to the question I've asked. The question I've asked is, why can't people stand limelight as well? I'll come back to that. It's very important you don't lose your track, you see. So Prasadji, he runs an organization called Smiles, and trying to serve people through the orphanage and children's home. And so we were invited. They were our hosts, and we had an opportunity to celebrate an occasion. And I had addressed them. And at the end of it, he was saying, sir, everybody is doing everything in their life for happiness. I'm also doing this. It gives me certain happiness. Am I also not being selfish like anybody else? What is the difference between me and anybody else? You know, everybody is running behind something and they want happiness or joy in their lives. So am I, you know, to which I said, I don't think, and I said, you're being very humble, you know. No, Guruji, no, I am not. Please, I'm genuinely asking this question. I want to know, am I being selfish, you know, by doing something which, you know, I enjoy doing it? To which I said, sir, if you are doing this act of sacrifice, which you're doing, if you do it for the sake of joy, you are being selfish. But if you get joy through living a life of sacrifice, you're unselfish. I hope you get the point.
No,
Reddy Garu, please write it down. If you are doing this for seeking joy, Harish, if you can capture this, please. If you are doing this act for the sake of joy, you're being selfish. But if joy you derive having performed these actions, if you get joy out of doing these actions, you don't do for the sake of joy. Joy is something which you derive out of those actions. Then it's unselfish. Gayatri Ma, do you have that excerpt on the giving by Khalil Gibran?
No, Guruji.
We should have on standby, you know, or a folder create பண்ணலாம். எப்போது வேணும்னா நம்ம இதெல்லாம் அர்ஜென்ட்டா ஒரு கிரியேட் பண்ணுங்க ஒரு folder.
Okay.
There is I told it is an excerpt from Khalil Gibran. Let me see if I can grab that file. I don't, it'll be too much for me to grab now off the platform, but this is the gist of it. So once you live a life of sacrifice and service, every aspect of your life is filled with joy. And there is an iota of it in a life where you live a life of acquisition and aggrandizement. There are poles. One is North Pole, other is South Pole. So as rightly said, everybody is just caught up in this vicious cycle of acquisition. And having acquired, you have to hoard because you know you're going to part with it. So it's just acquisition, go on and on and on. And then there must, sometimes I think to myself and say, you fellows don't have conscience then? Are you all thick-skinned to the extent where it doesn't appeal to you all? You can't, to what extent you want to grab? How ruthless would you go for just grabbing for yourself? Christ says, blessed are those, the Shastras say, blessed are those who have a heart to give. You know, I'm known of a lady, I don't want to mention her name, in Hyderabad. Such a lovely family, Not that philosophically inclined, but they were very, very charitable people. I'm talking in the early 90s, you know, when I came back from ashram and things. We never had a car. And whenever we used to have Swamiji and the team coming in to Hyderabad for his visits, used to arrange for the logistics arrangement, you know, everything. And you needed a vehicle to run around and to take people around. I remember every time the family used to provide for a car, she used to ensure not only she'll give you a vehicle, She'll also ensure the tank is full every day, n number of times. N number of times. It's one of the simplest of things. And whenever we had come back home after a long day, drop them off, always there was food, always we were taken care of, always provided for, not just me, anybody. I'm just sharing my little experience with my interactions with the family. And the beauty of it is she always had a smile on her face. What a smile. As I'm talking, it's still flashing back. And it just boils down to that attitude she had of all the time. She was a giver and giver and giver. And all the time is to tell her, Ma, carry on this. You don't need any more Vedanta. Carry on. And in my mind, I used to tell, moment I talk of giving, you will come in my mind. And still, I'm true to that thought that I greatly, no doubt, over the course of my life, you have met very, very generous people. Not be generous because I've been a beneficiary. No, the fact that they have been great givers, not necessarily you have personally been a beneficiary of it, but they all have been great givers. So you, in order to taste the true joy of life, you must be a giver. And yesterday the topic was, do you feel full enough to be a giver? The problem is you all feel still empty, having got so much of the world with you, a fair portion of the world or a little portion of the world, whatever the portion of the world, you still feel you have less. Therefore, you feel empty and you want to acquire more, isn't it? But the moment you feel full, you want to part with it. So it's very, very sound policies, we say, isn't it? They're all sound policies. And you must have this, somehow you must inject these principles into your kids. Young and brilliant, and they are going to have a long span, a professional career, a long life ahead of them. And if their life is founded on these principles, believe me, they will rock the world. They'll be true leaders in every walk of the way. In every word, they'll be leaders. Revered, looked up to. Everybody out there makes enough for themselves. How many out there make enough for everybody out there? That's a rarity. That's a real rarity. Being in the world where everybody is thinking of themselves, you be there and think for others. You will stand out. Believe me, you'll stand out. So why people can't stand limelight is because you seek it, you want it, and when you get it, you can't stand it. Let's seek advice from another wise soul. RPG.
Hari Om Guruji.
Hari Om, sir.
Yes.
What do you mean? Yes, I repeated the question 10 times, and you say yes now. What? I don't understand.
Oh no, I thought. Well, I mean, you in a sense answered it.
No, I'm not.
Why?
I know the Shastra scholars fool. I'm not to that level of fool where I answer myself when I continue to ask the question. You know.
I thought you answered it.
No.
The limelight. There's actually one of my favorite American songs is called Limelight. It's a rock song. It's a great song. It's great lyrics, and it talks about this very thing. And I think it's the song that invokes the quote from Shakespeare. From
Stage is
As
yours.
You Like It. Yeah.
Stage is yours.
And it speaks about being
I want you to sing, my dear, not give a lecture to us.
I
You talk of limelight
sing.
and you say a rock band, and I told the stage is yours, and you're still lecturing to us.
I can't sing, unfortunately. You have a lovely voice. I do not. And
two things: me and singing don't go well.
No,
and that
that's
me
not
and
true.
me and rock is, my God. You'll start throwing stones at me now if I start doing that.
So some of the lyrics are wonderful. Living in the limelight, the universal dream. For those who wish to see, those who wish to be must put aside the alienation, get on with the fascination. And then he goes on, all the world's indeed a stage and we are merely players, performers and portrayers, each another's audience. So it's this, we get caught up in having an audience, right? And then we find out that it's really hollow, that there's nothing there. And we keep ratcheting it up, whether it's social media or in-person socialization or whatever it is. It doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't get us anything other than maybe a little bit of praise, good time, and then we're on to the next audience, the next hit, as it were. And the limelight ultimately results in no real value, no permanent value for us.
See, you're right. You're talking from an absolute point where there's no value to it and things. But even while you're relating to it, there can be a certain joy, isn't it? There's nothing revulsive in any aspect of life. What Vedanta teaches us is gain a capacity. Please mark my words. Vedanta teaches us to gain a capacity to relate with any aspect of life and eke the maximum joy right through your life. Gives you the capacity to relate with the world, with any aspect of life, and eke the most joy right through your life. So there's no depreciation value of the joy content, which is what I'm asking. When you first see, let's say you're given an interview and you know that your article is being published next week in the magazine. And when you know the magazine is on the shelves, the first thing you want to is go to the store, pick up a magazine and to see, flip through, where did my article has come. Isn't that joy and anxiety and that you're jumping with excitement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you feel the same thing that 100th time or 1000th time that's happening? You should feel that. You should get that same joy. The joy you got when you first time drove your car, you got your license, you had that first car, it could have been an old car, but you had it. What's the joy, the thrill of driving? Now you again have to sit in this traffic for next 1 hour, the pain in the neck. Why? What happened to the joy? You lost the charm. Bringing the same principle, you enjoyed limelight, you wanted it, you sought it, you got it, now you're running away from it. Why? Because you are attached to it. If you are attached to it, you can't enjoy it. If you are detached to it, you will enjoy it. That's the secret. The secret of joy or happiness in life is detachment, renunciation. And that's what the opening remarks of the Ishavasya Upanishad says. May you enjoy life through renunciation. If you have learned that art of renouncing, you'll enjoy life. Every facet of it. Even acquisition you'll enjoy. Even preservation you'll enjoy. Certainly parting you'll enjoy. But if you don't relate to it, it becomes a pain in the neck, it becomes a torture. That is what I was looking at, RPG, so I didn't answer myself.
Yeah, so I think in recent reading and studies, this joy or success or happiness, when we think about it as an effect of, as opposed to a pursuit of, it's an effect of, it's an outcome. Going back to your earlier comment, I found that is quite profound, right? It's not something you're seeking, but it's an effect of the work or the knowledge you've gained or the action you've undertaken. And in that, it's in its purest sense, is an effect, and it's hard to distinguish sometimes, you know, because you ask yourself, well, gosh, I feel great. Is that wrong? You know, should I feel this euphoria or this joy? It wasn't like you sought it out. It kind of happened. But you know, with this knowledge, do you feel like you've perhaps gained it, not because of the effect, but because you were really trying to get it, right? And then you realize, no, this just, I was just doing what I was doing, and it materialized. Isn't this wonderful, right? And as long as you don't get carried away in that, you know, there's the fear that first round, you know, Sriniji hit the hole in one, he's going to be like looking for the next hole in one, right? That, as long as you don't get caught up in that spiral, then I think you can maintain some distance and continue to enjoy your work.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Arpinji. Very true. Yes, sir. We'll have to leave it at that. Setuji, you've been wanting to say something for a while. Yes, please.
Hari Om Guruji.
Hari Om, sir.
This, as you rightly said, if we feel full, and we feel full when we, with the knowledge, when we gain knowledge and it is transformed to wisdom, then parting is, you experience joy in parting, which I have experienced. And I also recollect, just wanted to share, one NRI couple, Nipun Mehta and his wife, after their wedding, they decided to, they never visited India, Indian villages and all. They decided to walk 3 months. Their honeymoon was walking 3 months through the villages of India with a budget of $1 per head, not more than that. They wanted to sleep wherever shelter is given and all. So he narrated in one place, in a village, in a mountain, they were feeling thirsty, and there is an old lady with a pot of water, and they asked her water, and she parted the entire water with joy. And then they asked, can we fill it up? She said, you have to go 5 miles to get it filled up. That is what she did. She filled it up, brought it for her entire family needs, and she had joy when someone asked for it and parting the entire thing. That was very touching. Same way I heard a comment from a tribal when someone asked how much of the land is yours, because government allotted them some land. This tribal said, everything is on the earth is God's land. There is nothing, everything is mine and everything is yours. There is nothing like yours and mine. How does, he said, how does this ownership come? Where from this ownership come? This. And my own experience has been, earlier I did used to part, but it was in trickles, and there was a lot of pain in parting. But with the knowledge over a period, this parting, we are enjoying parting. That is because of the sense of fulfillment, partial, at least partial fulfillment is there, and that there is a compassion is coming. Basically, compassion makes us to loving, and compassion makes us to part. But today I heard a lesson from you that one can enjoy even acquisition, preservation, as well as parting. All three, if we are detached, we are only trustees. We came with nothing and we go with nothing, and we are only trustees. Yeah.
Hari Om. It always is very anything that is said with experience and wisdom and heart, it always touches you, isn't it? So whenever you say, it always is far more than the words you speak, Setuji, you know, because we see it in your thoughts and actions. So very, very true and very sweet of that tribal lady to part with that pot of water. Perhaps she would have trekked in the mountains, walked that 5 miles just to get that pot of water as a family. The stranger walks and knocks at the door. You parted without any second thought. Greatest of men are unheard, unsung. No noise about it. And we want to do a little bit with too much tamasha we are doing. So much tamasha, drama. Sir, have you got income tax exemption, sir? Nay. Kudukununa kudupa. Income tax exemption other tax either benefit that I want, this I want. Do you want to do it? First of all, do it and get done with it. Why is that you're hanging on your like an albatross around your neck? You're hanging. I want to do. When can we do? Is this the right time? Is that the right time? Tomorrow? Day after? Is this not? Why? Now we're going to 17th chapter. We'll continue next week. Rajasic and Tamasic Dhanam, that category. Sattvic Dhanam, I give my word before you do it, it's done and dusted. You have taken it off your head, done. Otherwise, 110 conditions you lay, you want to do a small act. A different wavelength. Got to be a different wavelength for that. Yes, Hariji. Just a minute. Rajima, please don't do anything. I'll try to. Yeah. Yeah, Hariji, please try now. Yeah.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, sir.
Guruji, I remember one of my experiences about 50 years back when I was almost 20 years old. There was a lady of ill repute who was staying near my house. And she used to stay underneath the bridge, the overbridge. There is a connecting overbridge near our house. One day in the evening, she was very hungry and I was going out and I saw her. Somebody gave her a bowl of rice and lot of fish and everything. And she was about to eat that. Suddenly another beggar came and begged. He was also hungry. And I saw her that she took the full fish and more than half of the rice. She took it and gave it to her and then smiled. I was totally taken aback the way that with the happiness and she was a lady of ill repute. Everybody knew about her. And most of the time she was drunk, but I learned a lot of Vedanta from her.
Interesting.
It is 50 years back and she is still in front of me. Every day I remember her.
Amazing, isn't it? Very sweet. Thanks for sharing that experience. In fact, Ramatirtha says, Vedanta is written in the brooks, it's written on the valleys, it's there in the mountains, it's there on the leaves. You must see Vedanta there. You must read Vedanta there. You must see that everything in nature is giving. You don't have the eyes to see, therefore you complain and you take, isn't it? So if you have the eyes to see, as you said, these moments really go a long way in forming an impression.
I need to share one more experience with you, which has changed my life.
If it can be short, sir, please.
Yeah, very short. That was when I was doing my master's in Germany during 1970s. we used to celebrate Diwali, all Indian friends. During one of the Diwali celebration, we saw suddenly a German lady with 3 Indian young boys. She came of different ages. When we started talking about her, she was telling that once she came to India and she happened to go and see in an orphanage. Suddenly her mind got changed and she adopted all the 3 children in one go. And she brought them back to Germany. And she made it a point that these children don't lose the fundamental connect with their own homeland. So she used to go everywhere, wherever there was Indian festival or Indian cultural organization, so that the children don't lose their root. It changed my life.
Very profound. The thought is very profound.
She's German.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm sure we all have so much to share. Maybe we should have another platform or something where we could actually enrich ourselves through the experiences so it touches us. I'm sure all of us have, and I would really love to lend my ears because it inspires me. All this should only inspire you to embark on a life to be a far greater giver than what you are, right? Please allow me to sum up these thoughts, which I wanted to. So wealth becomes negative when you approach it selfishly, when you start hoarding and aggrandizing, when you approach it as an end in itself, you develop greed and thirst, which we said Krishna. Then every phase of wealth, which is acquisition, preservation, and parting, becomes painful. Then what happens is where you start acquiring and accumulating wealth, and you don't relate with it well, wealth where accumulates, as Oliver Goldsmith says, where wealth accumulates, men decay. Wherever you find you accumulate and hoard wealth, what it does, the negative side of wealth is it gives you access to sense objects, enjoyments. So wealth is nothing but, if you don't relate to wealth rightly, wealth creates an avenue for sensuality and indulgence. So where there is indulgence, you lead a life of immoral, where there are no value systems. Where any society which is indulgent becomes immoral. And indulgence comes when you have acquired and not parted with it, you start indulging in it. So you start spiritually, your values decay, you become immoral, you become tamasic, you become indulgent. So wealth becomes instrumental for your spiritual downfall. Tamasic breeds, tamas breeds. Also, it breeds disharmony and discontentment. It breeds disharmony amongst your own well-wishers. Forget outside people who are envious at your success. Even your own near and dear are not happy at your own success, your own siblings, your own cousins, your own extended family, your own brothers and sisters. Nobody is happy for your growth. Very rare are people who are genuinely happy for your growth. So there is disharmony because of your wealth. And also it breeds discontentment within you. Furthermore, it blocks the thought of the reality, because you're pursuing it as an end in itself. You can't see anything greater. You can't see the truth, the reality beyond it. And if you don't relate to wealth well, you end of the day become a taker. And also, whatever said and done, there is a belief. I don't know how true it is, but there's a belief that has stood the test of time, that wealth doesn't last more than 3 generations. You have struggled and acquired it for whom? For your own kith and kin. They somehow managed to preserve it, and by the time it comes to your grandchildren, they have completely splurged it and lost it completely. It's already gone. So all what you acquire doesn't last more than 3 generations. So it has got a very short shelf life. If you live a life of negative, wrong relationship. Now, when you relate with wealth correctly, what does a positive relationship with wealth means? When you approach wealth through an unselfish means. So the approach, the path, the route to acquiring wealth is through means of service and sacrifice. Means you lead a life of unselfishness. You lead a sattvic life. As the Gita says, it becomes, you eat the remnants of sacrifice. When you lead a sacrificial life, whatever comes from that sacrificial life, the remnants you enjoy. So your accent is always, you take that place and position you hold only to serve. If you are a chairman of an organization, you want to serve the organization, not use that position. What perks can I embellish myself with? What further benefits and in whatever way am I benefited? So its attitude is, have I given far more than what I've taken? Now I come to a certain point, you start holding posts in all these boards, isn't it? And thereafter, you are just being rewarded and paid. But are you giving far more than what you're taking? The thought always is to hold a post and position only to serve, give far more. And if that act of sacrifice rewards you, gracefully accept it. But your accent is not to acquire, your accent is to part, is to be a giver. So thereafter, then it becomes only a means to an end. So wealth only becomes an instrument, not really the end in itself. You need the resources, so wealth becomes a means. And thereafter, what happens? The purpose or the wealth in your life doesn't block your thought of the reality. So the wealth is there in your life, but it doesn't blindfold you. Wealth is there. And wealth is there to such an extent where you lead a life of a Raja Rishi. You are a royalty. You have enough wealth, enough resources. You're living a life of royalty, but you are a Rishi inside. This you must envision. Raja Rishi is a man who lives a life of highest values with all that money and wealth, what it can provide in comfort and convenience for you. But inwardly, you are a Rishi because you are detached. And when you are detached to wealth, you'll be able to enjoy every part of it. And that is when wealth becomes a goddess. You will start worshipping it. Wealth will bless you. Wealth will serve you. That is what is symbolized by goddess Lakshmi, who is serving. Whom is she serving? Rajima?
Vishnu, Guruji.
Lord Vishnu. And the picture, the Ananta Shayana, that posture, what do you see? Lord Vishnu is relaxing, lying on his side with his feet stretched out, and Lakshmi Ma is sitting at his feet and serving, isn't pressing it. What does it mean? Don't have to literally do that. Huh?
No.
Harishji, see, this is what Guruji also saying. So start somewhere, you must say. No, you don't say that. Okay, start somewhere. Okay, my legs are hurting, stretch out, and then don't tell her to do. Huh?
Guruji, I was telling her to act.
Correct. Now you are into the mode of action. That's why I wanted to throw caution to the air. You don't have to do anything here. Thought poduvinga. So what does that symbolize? Ramji, any idea what does that symbolize? That posture.
Hari Om, Guruji.
Hari Om, sir.
I mean, I don't know the philosophical meaning of that, but I presume that Goddess Lakshmi serves those in need through Lord Vishnu. In which case she is serving Lord Vishnu, but it is actually serving those in need, because Lord Vishnu goes to protect and those who are in need. But in general terms, I think we are all instruments in her hands to serve the needy. So if she gives us money, we should use it to serve the needy, because she has chosen us as the instrument. And if you have that kind of attitude, then I think we can do whatever you said just now, that do it without attachment and with a sense of detachment, and use it, earn it with the service and sacrifice attitude. And then, so that is as far as we are concerned. But Lord Vishnu, of course, many people misinterpret that the wife should serve the husband, but that is not the meaning, I know. And I do feel that it is basically serving those in need, using those who are capable of serving, and then the goddess serves those people who can, goddess blesses those people who are actually capable of serving others. That's what I felt.
Right. It's a very valid interpretation from your point of view. I agree to that. But if you understand what Vishnu symbolizes the truth, the reality, the highest symbol, which is Brahman in a philosophical perspective, and goddess wealth serving the absolute truth or reality, so which is represented as goddess Lakshmi serving Lord Narayana. Lord Narayana is the Lord. So wealth serving the higher cause, not just, as you said, to the needy, but when the wealth is used to
Higher cause, yeah.
a higher cause. When you have a higher cause, wealth will come and serve you. That's what it means. One who leads a life of a higher cause, wealth will be provided to fulfill those objectives and purposes. See, get the concept right. When you have a higher cause, wealth will come and serve you. When you don't have a higher cause, you have to run behind wealth. When you are selfish, you are chasing wealth to acquire. But when you show your back to wealth and say, no, I'm not interested, I want to seek the higher, as Lord Vishnu, wealth will come and serve you. So either are you chasing wealth, or is wealth coming and serving your purposes? That's the difference. So if you are a higher purpose, wealth becomes an instrument. If it becomes the object of your pursuit, you become a slave. Second is you become a master. So Vishnu symbolizes the truth, the highest truth, which is the highest goal of self-realization. There are many great acts of charity you can do, many sacrifices you can do, but of all services and sacrifices, to impart with the knowledge of the self is the highest. I even remember the words with Prasadji when he spoke to me a few days ago. He was telling this openly, Guruji, we are doing No doubt we're doing service and sacrifice and charity and all these things, but I'm not putting, and I'm not saying anything to impress you or whatever, but he said this, but there's nothing greater than parting with Atma Vidya. If all sacrifices to part with Atma Vidya is the highest service you can ever render to mankind. I think Ashama, you were clarifying the other day, and I got that question to me. She was asking whether is self-realization a selfish act? Isn't it, Ma?
Yeah. How do you classify the goal of attaining moksha or self-realization?
How do you classify attaining the goal?
The goal
of
of attaining moksha
Uh-huh.
or self-realization. How would you classify that goal?
It is the higher, as we say, it is the highest goal. And a goal is something which is unselfish. When you say the highest goal, it is the grandest of all. It is the most purest. It is actually not even unselfish, it's selfless.
But can't we continue to live our lives in a sattvic way without having a goal, without any forethought? What is the conclusion going? What is the outcome going to be?
I don't get you.
I'll lead a simple life, sattvic life with bhakti, without having any goal, without the forethought that I want to attain moksha. I'm doing this to attain self-realization.
Mm-hmm.
Can we not lead that life?
No, absolutely you can, but then it's not, it's a rarity. In the Gita, we learned very rare indeed is one who attains realization. You can be just a God's good man, going about doing no harm. You can play your role, just leading a quiet, simple life. Yes. But then as a human, you have that immense potential. And furthermore, it's your birthright to get your own self, to realize yourself. So why would you want to be just merely content with leading, I would say in that sense, a mediocre life compared to the grand vision of realizing the self? But there's nothing wrong, but why would you want to think small when you can think high? When you can attain that grandeur, isn't it? In fact, I'm trying to get to that verse in the Gita itself. It says, you know, sorry, in the BHAJAGOVINDAM, he says this. Maybe I'll refer it to you later on. It says this: 100 years thus is of no use. Janma Shatena, which is the verse? Rajima, which is the words which ends that way? In the 17th verse, he says this: Kurute Ganga Sagara Gamanam Vrata Paripalana Mathavadanam Jnana Vihinaha Sarvamatena Muktim na bhajati Janma Shatena. Ashama, he says that I'm not trying to be critical here, I'm just trying to fall back on what the text says. He says, one proceeds where Ganges meets the ocean, strictly observes vows, even is charitable. We're talking of giving, parting with wealth, you're charitable. 100 lives does, not just one janma, 100 lives you're born like this. Bereft of this knowledge, there is no way to liberation by all beliefs. If you live a life without this knowledge, janma shatena, 100 janmas you live a life without this knowledge of the self, he says is of no use. It's not my belief. It's all sarva matena. All schools of thought believe that. Now you can be charitable, you can go to spiritual pilgrimages, you observe strict vows. In the sense you said, God's a good man. He does nothing wrong, but yet 100 life does is no use, he says. Okay. So it's always, I don't know whether you ever feel, never take what's coming your way for granted. It's a blessing of a lifetime. You take it for granted, you have lost it. Don't take this that's coming your way for granted. Nothing. In itself is an extraordinary miracle that we are actually having this knowledge coming our way, isn't it? I'm not ever telling or making anyone feel that you have taken it for granted, but it's an extraordinary opportunity, isn't it? Right. Thank you, Ma. So Narayana represents the truth, and the Lord, when your thoughts are on the higher goal, wealth becomes a means, an instrument of your fulfilling those higher purposes. So wealth will come and serve you, to so much so to the extent they say materiality is a byproduct of spirituality. It comes. So it should not be the main product you are seeking in life. When you seek the higher, the law of life is the lower comes to you. The law of life, when you seek the higher, lower comes to you. And furthermore, the more you give, the more you have to give. The more you will have to give. If you live a life of giving, as Khalil Gibran says, your coffers are never empty because you still want to give. The moment you give, it never gets empty, he says, you will have more to give. So you'll have to taste that. And this is leading a sattvic life where you relate with wealth in a sattvic way, and every facet of life is joy and bliss. Now, as talking in Harish's tone, action plan. What is the action plan for wealth? Action plan for wealth is put this philosophy aside, start giving. The first thing you got to do is physically start parting with it. Start giving physically. Even if you give recklessly, even if you give indiscriminately, start giving. To just tell to yourself, I am not attached to it. Then you can philosophize and say you can be Raja Rishi. Then it's a mental quality. Detachment is a mental state, but to practice that, exhibit that detachment, you've got to start physically parting with it. And to what extent can you part? Don't end up parting everything and say, Guruji, I'm on the streets, what do I do now? Don't get me into trouble, please. Now it's to what extent can you part with it? So that it may be a pain. As Khalil Gibran says, it's a baptism. It's a process you've got to go through. You've got to be baptized to that act of parting and giving. Once you have tasted it, there's no greater joy than that. Okay. And I'm reminded of a famous Kabir Doha. Arpiji, गाएंगे? Kabir ji says, साईं इतना दीजिए जाने कुटुंब समाए, मैं भी भूखा ना रहूं, साधु न भूखा जाए, कबीरा Sadhu na bhukha jai. They give me so much wealth that I am fed, the community is fed, even the wise souls are fed. So I have enough to part with it. And that was the culture of our ancient community, that whenever the agricultural country India was, whenever they produced, at the end of the year, they had plenty. And the elders in the community, what they did is they kept what they required for their sustenance. The rest of it was distributed evenly amongst the villages and the needy. So come the next calendar year for cultivating, they again had to produce. They never sat and ate the produce what they had. That would breed tamas and discontent, disharmony and false contentment. So every year they had to go and sow, plow, produce. Again, they had surplus. They kept little for the sustenance and parted the rest to the needy. So everybody were fairly provided for, and everybody is continuously working and producing. This was the time of Satya Yuga. Now we are in Kali Yuga. So we need to do a lot to revive that culture. We have few minutes. I can, I think a few minutes, very few minutes. Shashikanji, and then Harish wants to comment, clarify something. Yes, sir, please. Yeah, could you please try now? Yes, please.
Hari Om Guruji.
Hari Om, sir.
We have been learned throughout our life. I'm just commenting about Ashaji's comment and your feedback. I have learned out of your discourse itself, because your discourse has, changed my life maybe a lot. I have keeping each point in my life and just following it. I know that you have exactly made me to understand, and also based on my learning since my entire, 61 years of life. What we need is concern. Yes, we need to conceive an idea in advance. If at all you do not conceive this, you only exactly taught us some time back. Even if I want a tea, first I need to exactly generate a thought on that. If I need wealth, I need to generate a thought on that. I need to generate a waves for that. And I think around 4 weeks back or 5 weeks back, out of one of your discourse, you also made this very amply clear that yes, if you need self-realization, the need first is concern. Yes, conceive the idea first. If you do not conceive that idea, how it comes to you? If you go back to even Christ is concerned, or some of the other, philosophers or maybe the worldly teachings are concerned, without having a thought, how will you gain it? And your own discourse also, conceive it. That word, still I hold it in my brain. That is the particular word you told it. Over to you, Guruji.
Appreciate. Thank you, Ji. Namaskar. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye. Hari Om. Yes, Harish.
Hari Om, Guruji.
Hari Om, Harish. Sorry, you are. Yes. Oh, Rajima, just hold on, please. Yes, Harish, please.
Guruji, can you hear me?
Yes.
Guruji, you had mentioned one very profound statement that you said never take what's coming your way for granted. If you've taken it for granted, you've lost it. Does that mean, Guruji, that whoever takes things for granted, through some means of providence, it will be taken away through a chain of natural events? Does it mean that, Guruji, if somebody takes anything for granted, it'll be removed automatically through a natural force? Is that what it means?
Could you come again, please? I'm sorry.
when your statement, Guruji, says we take things for granted, we've lost it. I just want to have a deeper understanding of that specific meaning of that sentence. Would that mean that if we take anything for granted, when you say that we've lost it, that when anyone takes any aspect for granted, does that mean that the law of the universe or providence will at some point come and remove it from us because we've taken it for granted? It'll be removed from our element. Does that mean that?
I don't know. I've not given it so much thought, Harish.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have to come back to you on that. All I meant when I said, don't take this knowledge for granted, because in the course of your worldly interactions or your mundane experiences, this should stand out as a pendant, because this is that experience, an hour a week or a few hours a week you spend, reminds you of the highest goal of realization and nothing short of it, the grandeur of the higher purposes of life. And if you don't encash this opportunity, reflect and contemplate and do sadhana, it just becomes yet another meaningless experience without impacting and transforming you. So I said, make this experience count so that it's like, it's the pendant in a necklace. What's the necklace without a pendant? It is the gem. It's the real quintessential. So a lot goes out so that this knowledge comes your way, and don't take it for granted. You know, like you tell your child, so much is happening, don't take it for granted, my dear. You know the kind of effort you're putting in to make it happen for your child. Whether it could be sending abroad or giving the right education or giving the right exposure, giving the right opportunities. But if the child is not mindful, what happens? He loses it all, isn't it? In a generic sense, I meant it. But I didn't know Providence is going to come and take it away. I don't know, Harish. I need to think on that and come back.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Ji. Thank you. Thank you. So, Sriniji, shall we sing the national anthem? Don't tell me which one, huh?
Well, certainly you could. I'm sure you're talking about the Indian national anthem.
No, because temporarily, I would say nothing is the end. At least come next week, Harishji, we will certainly move on to the 30th verse. So we have done the end to the 29th verse. I don't know how long we have been, maybe 4 or 5 weeks,
Mhm.
Oh, wow, 6 weeks. Wow. And truly, it has been a very fascinating insight. And it just tells us how much is packed in this seemingly innocuous words. Right. So we'll come back to you. All right. Thank you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.